And so, uh, and we did briefly review over significant figures. So with SI units, which are the standard system of units for different measurements, because as you can imagine, we have the English system, we have the metric system, and so we have different types of units we can use. So they came about with a set of standard units for everyone to recognize. And so there are 7 fundamental or base units that we have, and everything else is derived from these 7 units. And so most of them follow the metric system. For example, the SI unit for mass is kilogram, the SI unit for length is meter. Now these are just the SI units, they're not the most common units. So for example, for mass, generally in the lab we use grams. In the lab we usually use centimeters and millimeters, but the SI unit for length is meters, for time is second. The most of them, again, are metric. The only one that's kind of throws people off is temperature. And so the SI unit for temperature is Kelvin. But the metric unit for temperature is degrees Celsius. So keep that in mind uh, when we're dealing with SI units. Now, some other SI units that usually stump some students are derived units. And one of the derived units is volume. And if you remember, the equation for volume is, we have a cube-like object. It's length times width times height. And since the SI unit for length is meter, meter times meter times meter gives us meter cubed. So the SI unit for volume is meter cubed. However, the common units for volume are like milliliters. And to give you the size of a meter cubed, 1,000 liters equals 1 meter cubed. So it's quite a big unit. And obviously in the lab we don't use meters cubed for measurements because it's too big. So generally in the lab we use milliliters and liters. Next we have density, and if you remember density, the equation is mass over volume. And so the SI unit for mass is kilogram, the SI unit for volume is meter cubed, and that's where we get the SI unit for density is kilogram per meter cubed. But the common units for density are for solids and liquids is generally grams per milliliter, and for gases, grams per liter. So just to show you that the SI unit doesn't necessarily refer to the most common units. So for most common units we use other types of units, but these are the standard units that we use for these types of physical quantities. Now, when we're calculating between metric and standard units, we need to have some conversion factors for each type of quantity. And now for English to metric for length, you have all these equivalent units you can use. Now, you need to know at least one from each one of these quantities. Again, which one you know is doesn't matter, it's just up to you, but you need to know at least one of these. Now, the only one that's exact is that inch to centimeter. The other ones you have to account for their significant figures. So for example, the first one has 4 significant figures. Actually, all of them have 4 significant figures except for the last one, which is exact for length. For volume, you need to know at least one of them from volume. Again, remember one that you can, it's easy to remember. Don't go on Google and find some exotic one that, it's not difficult. It's difficult to remember. So for example, 1 gallon is 3.785 decimeters cubed, and this is also equal to 3.785 liters. So 1 decimeter cubed is actually a liter as well. So 3.785 decimeters cubed is also 3.785 liters cubed. 1 quart is 940, or excuse me, 0.9464 decimeters cubed. This would also be the same for liters as well. So that's the way to convert between quarts and decimeters cubed or liters, because a liter is a decimeter cubed. Also 1 quart is 946 centimeters cubed. And a centimeter cubed is the same thing as a millimeter. And then for mass, the common one is 2.205 pounds equals 1 kilogram, or 1 pound is 0.4536 kilograms. Now, if the question you're asked doesn't have a conversion factor, you can use any one that you want. But if the question you're asked gives you a conversion factor, then you have to use that conversion factor in the calculation. So make sure you note that when you're doing a problem. So again, what we're going to be talking about is dimensional analysis. So we have to use conversion factors to do our calculations. Some conversion factors, as we'll see in some examples, will be question specific. So it would be some kind of conversion factor given to us in the question. Others we'll have to know from our memory. So the first thing we want to always do when we're doing dimensional analysis is identify what we're wanting to get. So what are we solving for? And make sure you look at the units of what you're solving for as well. Then we want to, at least come up with a plan of action to solve the problem. So you just don't want to start blindly calculating things. And next, come up with a list of conversion factors that we'll need. Any equations, for example, we're doing density or volume. And then lastly, make sure all the units cancel except the one that we need, like we did in the previous lecture. So now let's look at some examples. So here we have number one. We have Dustin has 350 pints of L from the upside down world. How many liters of L does Dustin have? And it tells us that we're going to use 1 gallon is 3.79 liters. So Dustin goes to the upside down world, finds 350 pints of L. We want to know how many liters is this. So what we're looking for, oh, 1 second, is we're looking for liters. So we want to know how many liters we need. Now, how we're going to do this, since it tells us how many gallons are in a liter, we're going to take pints, convert it to quarts. And there's different ways you can do this. This is just the way I'm going to do it, because we know how many quarts are in a gallon, and then we can determine the number of liters. So again, the reason I chose this is because the conversion factor given to us is 1 gallon is 3.79 liters. And so in order to get the liters, we have to get the gallons. So we know that gallons is made up of quarts, and quarts are made up of pints. So now we can draw our train track. So we're starting with 350 pints. Now, some conversion factors that we'll need, in addition to the one given to us, is that there's 2 pints in 1 quart, and there's 4 quarts in 1 gallon. Now, notice that both of these, pints to quarts, quarts to gallons, are in the same system of measurement. So these conversion factors here that I just wrote are exact because again they're in the same English system. So those are exact conversion factors. So since we're going to convert pints to quarts, we put pints on the bottom and we put a quart up top so that way the pints cancel. So that's step one, we converted pints to quarts. Next we want to convert quarts to gallons. So in our conversion factor of quarts to gallons, quarts goes on the bottom. And gallon goes on top. So now we're at gallons. I gotta add one more set of tracks. And then finally we want to go from gallons to liters. So we know that 1 gallon is 3.79 liters. And so we notice here that everything cancels but liters. So everything on top we multiply, we divide by everything on the bottom. Let me do that right now. So the calculator tells me 165.8125 liters. But we're not finished. So when we're doing conversions to different systems of measurements, we have to look at significant figures. And so if we look at our original numbers, so 350, this has 2 significant figures. 3.79 has 3 significant figures. The 2 pints, 1 quart, 4 quarts, 1 gallon, those are exact. So we need to round to 2 significant figures. So we go 1, 2, after the 6 is 5.8125, that's greater than 5. So we round up. So our answer is 170 liters, or 1.7 times 10 to the 2 liters. That's the first one. And in a little bit we'll pause in case you have any questions. So that was Dustin in the upside down world. He stole some L, or got some L, and he has about 170 liters. Now looking at number 2, Frodo has 6,530 grams of Kreniki bird legs. How many pounds of bird legs does Frodo have? And so again, what are we looking for? We're looking for pounds of birds' legs. And Kreniki is a bird from Middle Earth. And so what are we going to do? We're going to take, since we need pounds and our conversion factor is 1 kilogram is this many pounds, so we need to get to kilograms in order to get the pounds. So we're going to start with grams, go to kilograms, go to pounds. So in addition to the conversion factor we have, the other conversion factor we need is 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams. So now we're going to draw our train tracks. So we're starting with grams. The first step is to convert grams to kilograms. So in our conversion factor, grams goes on the bottom, and kilogram goes on top. Now we want to convert from kilograms to pounds. So kilogram in our conversion factor goes on the bottom, and pounds goes on top. And so again, you'll notice that everything cancels but kilograms. So now we're ready to do the calculation. Everything on top we multiply, we divide by everything on the bottom. And so the calculator tells us that we have 14.39865 pounds. But we're not finished because we have to do it to the correct number of significant figures. So our original number has 3 significant figures because there's no decimal point at the end. So that 0 is insignificant. Our conversion factor, since it's English to metric, this has 4 significant figures. And 1 kilogram equals 1,000 grams is an exact number, so we don't have to worry about it. So we need to round to 3 significant figures. 1, 2, 3. After the 3 is a 9. So then we can round to 14.4 pounds. So here we have 2 more short ones, then we'll get into some more extravagant ones. So here we have 11 travels 15,200 yards to visit the head of the head Demogorgon in the upside down world. It should be how many kilometers does 11 travel? And we say that there's 3.3 feet in 1 meter. So 11 travels 15,200 yards to visit the Demogorgon boss. How many kilometers does he travel? And so we're given in the problem that 1 foot is this many meters. So what we're looking for is we're looking for kilometers. What we're given is yards, and the way we convert from English to metric is to get feet. So we have to go from yards to feet. And once we get to feet, we can get to meters because our conversion is meters to feet. And then once we have meters, we can get kilometers. So in addition to the conversion factor given to us, we need to also know how many feet in a yard and how many meters in a kilometer. And these are things you should know. You should know how many feet are in a yard and how many meters in a kilometer. So now we're ready to set up our train tracks. So again, we're starting with yards, 15,200 yards. So we need to go from yards to feet. So in our conversion factor, yards will go on the bottom and feet will go on top. And that's because, again, to the left on top is yards, so that way they cancel. So now we have feet. We need to go to meters. So in our conversion factor, the feet will go on the bottom and the meter will go on top. And then lastly, we need to go from meter to kilometer. So again, since meter is on top in our conversion factor, meter goes on the bottom. And kilometer goes on top. And you'll notice here that all the units cancel except kilometer. So now we're ready to plug and chug. So everything on top we multiply, we divide by what's on the bottom. And so the calculator gives us 13.81818182 and kilometers. But we're not finished yet. We have to look at the significant figures in our measured numbers. So on our initial number, 15,200, there's no decimal point at the end, so these zeros are insignificant. So this has 3. 3.3 feet in a meter. 3.3 has 2. Yard to foot is exact because it's in the English system. And kilometer to meter is exact because it's in the metric system. So we need to round this to 2 significant figures. So we have the 1, 3. After the 3 is an 818 continues. So we need to round it to 14. So this is 14 kilometers. So now switching gears back to Middle Earth, we have Bilbo who travels 45,555 Rangar from the Gulf of Lid. I forgot a word there. From. Was making these last night. From Gulf of Lindon to Mount Doom. And it says if 5,000 Rangar is equal to 2.9987 miles, how many meters did Bilbo travel? And so here, what we're looking for is meters. And since I didn't give English to metric conversion factor, you can use whichever one you want. But since I have above that 3.3 feet is 1 meter, then I'll use that one. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use, to get from miles, which is English, to get from the English to the metric, I'm going to use 3.3 feet equals 1 meter. Oh, no, let's just try another one. 1 mile equals 1.607 kilometers. We'll use that one. So we know that 1 mile is 1.607 kilometers. So in order to set this up, we're going to go from Rangar to miles to kilometers to meters. Now, if you chose another metric to English conversion, well, then yours may look a little bit different. I chose this one. So now, in addition to the conversion factors that are given to us, we'll need to know that, again, 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. Set up our train track. So we're starting with 45,555 Rangar, and that's actually a unit in Middle Earth. I did some research. And we want to convert first Rangar to miles. So we know that 5,000 Rangar is 2.9987 miles. So again, we put Rangar on the bottom because to the left on top is Rangar, so that way they cancel out. Next, we want to convert miles to kilometers. So in our conversion factor, mile goes on the bottom and kilometer goes on top. And then lastly, we want to go from kilometers to meter. So kilometer goes on the bottom, meter goes on top. And you'll notice that everything cancels but meter. So now we multiply everything on top, we divide by everything on the bottom. Just checking my work. So the calculator tells me 43,905.09721 meters. But we're not finished. We got to look at significant figures. So in our original number, we have 5 significant figures. Now this 5,000 Rangar to 2.9987 miles, these are different systems of measurements. This is the Rangar is a measurement in Middle Earth, and miles is the English system. So Rangar has one significant figure, the 5,000, is 5 is the only significant one, and this one has 5. We look at mile to kilometer, 1.607 has 4 significant figures, and kilometer to meter is exact. So our answer should have one significant figure. So after the 4 is a 3, since 3 is less than 5, it'll just round down to 40,000. Or you could write it as 4 e to the 4th meters.